You close the door and leave your cat alone. It looks calm. Maybe it doesn't even react. No meowing, no running after you. So you assume everything is fine. But what happens after you leave, most owners never see. And if you skip one simple step before walking out the door, your cat doesn't just wait. It builds stress. Slowly, quietly, until it starts showing up in ways you don't expect. Cats don't react like dogs. They don't panic when you leave. They don't make it obvious. And that's exactly why this problem goes unnoticed. Because what looks like independence is often just silent adaptation. And silent adaptation is dangerous, not because it's dramatic, but because it's invisible. The hidden stress. When you leave your home, your cat loses more than just your presence. It loses structure. Cats rely heavily on predictability, not because they're fragile, but because they're wired to control their environment. In the wild, unpredictability means risk. So even in a safe home, that instinct stays. Your cat tracks patterns. When you wake up, when you move around, when you feed it, when the house becomes quiet, and most importantly, when you leave. So when your routine feels random to them, when you leave at different times in different ways, it creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the biggest stress triggers for animals. But here's the part most people miss. This stress doesn't look like fear. It looks normal. Your cat might just sit there, or slowly walk away, or jump onto a chair and curl up. Nothing dramatic, but internally, its system is adjusting, and that adjustment comes with tension. What your cat actually does after you leave. Most owners imagine your cat just sleeping the whole time. And yes, cats do sleep a lot, but not in the way you think. After you leave, many cats go through a short phase of alertness. They move around, they check spaces, they listen. Why? Because something changed, and animals always respond to change first. Some cats go to the door, others go to the window. Some walked through the same path you just took, not because they're sad in a human way, but because they're trying to understand the shift. Then comes the second phase. They settle, but not always into relaxation, sometimes into passive waiting, sometimes into low-level tension, and that difference matters because a cat that rests calmly and a cat that settles under stress look exactly the same from the outside. How this turns into behavior. Now here's where things start to connect. That quiet, invisible tension doesn't disappear, it accumulates, and when it builds up enough, it starts showing somewhere else. Not when you leave, but later. That's why so many owners get confused, because the cause and the effect are separated. You leave in the morning, the behavior shows up at night, so it feels unrelated, but it isn't. That's when you start noticing. Scratching in places that were never touched before, random bursts of energy late at night, knocking things over more often, staring, watching, following you differently, or even the opposite, less interaction, less engagement, more distance, and it feels like your cat just changed. But it didn't, it adapted. The biggest mistake. Most people never think about how they leave. Because to us, it's nothing. You grab your keys, put on your shoes, maybe rush a little. Sometimes you check your phone while walking out, and then door closed. End of story. But for your cat, that moment is not neutral. It's a transition. And if that transition has no structure, it becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability equals stress. Small signals you're ignoring. Before you even leave, your cat is already watching you. It notices patterns you don't, picking up keys, putting on shoes, changing your pace, moving differently than usual. These are signals, and over time your cat starts associating them with your absence. But here's the problem. If these signals are inconsistent or chaotic, your cat can't form a clear pattern. So instead of, "this means they're leaving,"
It becomes something unpredictable is happening. And that's where tension begins, even before the door closes. What you should do instead. Before you leave, create a pattern. Something simple. something repeatable, something consistent. It doesn't need to be long, it doesn't need to be emotional, it just needs to be clear. For example, a short, calm interaction, the same sequence of actions before leaving, a predictable moment your cat can recognize. The key is not comfort, the key is structure. You're giving your cat something to understand, a signal that says, this is what happens next. Why this changes everything. When your cat understands the pattern, your absence stops being random. And when something is predictable, it stops being stressful. This doesn't mean your cat won't notice you're gone. It means it won't have to question it. And that's a huge difference. Because animals don't need control over everything. They just need things to make sense. And once they do, the behavior changes. Less tension, less random reactions, more stability. What most people try and why it doesn't work. At this point, many owners try to fix the situation in ways that seem logical. They leave toys, they leave food, they turn on the TV or some background noise. And while those things can help in some cases, they don't solve the core problem. Because the problem isn't boredom, it's unpredictability. You can fill the space with distractions, but if your cat doesn't understand the pattern of your leaving, the tension stays. That's why some cats ignore toys completely while you're gone, not because they don't like them, but because their attention is still focused on the change, on the fact that something in their environment doesn't make sense, and until that part is resolved, nothing else fully works. The over-comforting trap. There's another mistake that looks helpful, but can actually make things worse. Some owners try to comfort their cat too much before leaving. They pick it up, talk to it, give extra attention, and emotionally, it feels right. But from your cat's perspective, this sudden increase in attention right before you leave can feel like a signal that something is wrong. It breaks the natural flow. Instead of calm, predictable, neutral leaving, it becomes intense, unusual, then absence. And that contrast can increase tension instead of reducing it. So the goal is not to make up for leaving. The goal is to make leaving feel normal. How long it takes to see change. This isn't something that changes overnight.
Because your cat didn't build its patterns in one day. It learned them over time. So when you introduce a new pattern, it needs repetition. Consistency is what matters here, not perfection. If you repeat the same simple routine before leaving, day after day, your cat starts to recognize it, then expect it, and eventually relax into it. And that's the moment where behavior begins to shift. Not suddenly, but gradually. And that's how you know it's working. A quick self-check. If you're not sure whether this is affecting your cat, ask yourself a few simple questions. Does your cat behave differently after you've been away for a few hours? Do you notice more activity at night on days you leave longer? Does your cat become more distant or more demanding? If the answer to any of these is yes, there's a good chance this pattern is already influencing your cat. And the good news is, it's fixable, not by adding more things, but by making things clearer. Conclusion. Your cat doesn't need a perfect environment. It doesn't need constant stimulation. It doesn't even need you to change everything you do. What it needs is a pattern it can trust. Something simple, something repeatable, something that turns your absence from a question into something it understands. Because once your cat understands what's happening, it stops reacting to it. And that's where calm behavior begins.